What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and in today's video I'm going to be showcasing one of the more forgettable move availability updates this season, but actually probably one of the most fun updates with Shadow Gigalith on Lock-On. Now these battles were submitted to the channel by Devon Cheddar, a trainer you might be familiar with if you watch Jamie Finn's content, and they're also rocking a triple Shadow team with Gigalith in the lead and Raikou as the safe swap. Now PvPoke suggests Meteor Beam on Gigalith, and to be fair it is one of the strongest moves in the game, and with Lock-On you are getting there insanely fast, but of course you're not really going to boost up your lock-on damage, so the consistency and spamminess of Rockslide is probably a bit more useful in most matchups. Anyways, with that being said, let's just get straight into the question of the day. What's the most unexpected CMP tie you've lost/won in the Go Battle League? Now I'm not talking about where the game has glitched out and you've lost CMP with a Primeape up against a Credilli, because of course we all know that's not supposed to happen. I'm talking about legitimate CMP ties where you just didn't realize one of the Pokemon's attack stat was so much higher or so much lower than the other Pokemon, but let me know in the comment section down below. And with that being said, let's get into the battles now. Alright, so go into the first battle, leading Shadow Gigalith into Talonflames. Of course, not a great matchup. We do have two great responses in the back, however, so we safe swap into Shadow Raikou, baiting out a Primeape and outpacing it to the first charge move. Now, this is great to bait out because, of course, Gigalith does not want to see a Primeape whatsoever, and now we're actually going to reach a second Aura Sphere before the opponent gets to a second Rage Fist, grabbing both shields in the process. And at this point, we've probably done our job, and we will just no shield here, as of course, Rage Fist gonna get the knockout. Unfortunately, these battles were done on the new code, so the opponent actually regains the health they would have lost from the Volt Switch because it doesn't actually register, which I think is quite an interesting mechanic. It will take quite a while to get used to, at least on my end. But anyways, we are going to see the final Pokemon is a Shadow Empoleon. Shadow Gigalith, primed to sweep here. Superpower gets the one-shot. Yes, we've just debuffed our attack stat, but it doesn't matter. This is a Rock Slide. Rock Slide double super effective. Easily taking out the Talonflame despite that debuff, and we're able to take that game. Into the next battle, we're going to see Electrode in the lead. So we're going to stay in this matchup, at least initially. We are full sending close combat right off the bat here. Close combat, not respected. The opponent calling the bait there. They're now going to come in with Altaria. Once again, we're going to be safe swapping into our Shadow Raikou, and we're met with Macargo. So honestly, not that bad of a matchup. We do have access to Aura Sphere. We are slightly spammier than the Macargo, and if they try and overfarm like they're doing here, we are going to reach back-to-back Aura Spheres. So we grab both shields to the opponent, committing to a huge farm down, but we've got them very low. Obviously, we're not going to be able to take them out with any fast food pressure here, but we're going to no-shield, calling that they'd go for a Rock Tomb. They actually full send the overheat, but it doesn't really matter. We've now got two shields and a Shadow Gigalith, but we're actually not going to use them. Of course, we do resist everything. Sky Attack still does quite a lot of damage there. That is quite risky. Will a Rock Slide actually get the KO here? Rock Slide doesn't quite get the knockout. The opponent does reach a last-second charge move. However, we have put them into range where we can lock on, farm them down. We come out with back-to-back charge moves already. This thing is just incredibly spammy. Superpower gets the KO up against the Macargo, and we're able to take that game. Into the next battle, we're going to see Seaking in the lead. So a bit of a tricky matchup there just because the opponent will be on Peck as the fast move, which is super effective. But we do, of course, have Leaf Blade to hit for super effective in return. But we do swap out anyways. We swap into our Shadow Raikou, and we're met with a Furret. Now, this honestly not that bad of a matchup. They're going to go for a Trailblaze. We already have a second Aura Sphere, and we are over farming. However, I'm not entirely sure that we can live the Sucker Punch damage and reach another move. However, I guess it doesn't really matter as the opponent not going to go for the farm down, instead settling for a Swift there, which is fine. We can now come back in with the Shadow Gigalith. We're going to swap out and catch what's presumably going to be a resisted Swift onto our Gigalith. Now, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to fully fast move farm them down here, which is not ideal for us, but if they come back in with the Seaking, of course, the Peck damage is going to be resisted. So let's see what the opponent wants to do. They come back in with that Seaking, and we are already at the Rock Slide. This thing's so spammy. Rock Slide gonna connect. It doesn't get the KO there, but it does put them into Leaf Blade range. We can go for that combination play. Leaf Blade gets the knockout. Their final Pokemon gonna be a Clefable, which typically wouldn't be the best matchup for Shadow Gigalith. However, we do have that shield advantage, and it looks like two Leaf Blades will be enough damage to get the knockout the opponent. It doesn't even matter if that back-to-back Swifts just yet. They're actually not even running Swift, but either way, we go straight for Leaf Blade number 2. Leaf Blade takes out Clefable, and we're able to take that game. So, heading into next battle, we are going to see Shadow Gigalith into Fearos. Of course, not a great matchup. This time around, safe swapping into Gigalith, which is, I think, an interesting decision here, just because Raikou does have sort of better coverage generally. Obviously, Aura Sphere and Shadow Ball, pretty much perfect coverage into anything that isn't named Hisuian Zoroark. But either way, we are going to lose CMP in this matchup. We are going to see the opponent going to go for another drill run there. Of course, they do have great coverage into Gigalith. However, we can go for another Rock Slide. Rock Slide going to grab the final shield from the opponent, and the opponent's actually going to swap out into Licky Licky. So at this point, we're going to swap into our Shadow Gigalith. That is quite an interesting decision because the opponent now has the energy for the Shadow Ball. They are full sending, and they get the one shot. But now we're going to come in with our Shadow Raikou. Now remember, we just banked a ton of energy on the Gigalith. We're going to go for Aura Sphere. Aura Sphere doesn't quite get the one shot, which is really unfortunate for us. However, Shadow Ball also not going to get the knockout. They come back in with Fearos, but the opponent, they can't commit to the farm down. They're going to be tanking an Aura Sphere to the face. Aura Sphere gets the KO, and let's see what their final Pokemon is. It's going to be a Shadow Primeape. This could be a little bit dicey here. However, this is Superpower. Superpower doesn't get the KO. Oh my gosh, we have to throw another charge move. We go for Rock Slide this time around, as we don't want to debuff ourselves, but can we reach another charge move? Gigalith, yes! Actually, no, never mind. We don't even need the charge move. We get the lock on farm down, and we're able to take that game. But it looks like we would have got to the charge move anyways. Into the next battle, we're going to see a Camerupt in the lead. So we're going to farm up to 7, throwing on perfect timing, firing off a Leaf Blade, and Leaf Blade is going to be shielded. At this point, we probably could have gone for a close combat full send, but either way, going to go for another Leaf Blade. We likely grab both shields anyways, and now we swap out into our Gigalith. The opponent does have quite a lot of energy here. Of course, they're going to go for a Scorching Sands. I was going to say, even if they're on Earth Power, either way, they are going to get to back-to-back charge moves here. So we're going to double shield, and now the opponent's going to come in with a Licky Licky. We're going to go for a Superpower just before the opponent reaches a potential Shadow Ball. Superpower does huge damage, and now we're going to throw the next one on CMP. Of course, winning CMP, Superpower gets the KO there, and let's see what they want to do. They're going to come in with their final Pokemon, a Tinkaton, and we're going to swap out into our Shadow Raikou. Now, that is quite an interesting play just because we do allow them to get ahead on energy, and they're actually at back-to-back Bulldozers, which means we're not even going to reach an Aura Sphere. So potentially, should have looked to swap out a little bit sooner than that, but we do still have a lot of energy on the Gigalith. We're at back-to-back Superpowers at this point, so we are going to fire off the first one. Superpower number 1, going to connect, and we are going to throw that second one straight away. The opponent did have the catch opportunity, but they don't swap out, which means we get the KO there. They come back in with the Camerupt, and we're still able to reach yet another Superpower, so the opponent just concedes the match. So heading into the next battle, we're going to see Typhlosion in the lead. Not the best lead matchup for us. And of course, we do have Gigalith in the back, so we're actually going to swap out into our Shadow Raikou. We're going to go for the Aura Sphere. Aura Sphere going to grab a shield advantage. At this point, they likely just go for a Thunder Punch, but they've got us very low, so Thunder Punch actually will get the knockout. We're now going to come in likely with the Gigalith. Now, we don't have any fast move pressure, which is a little bit frustrating for us here, and we are likely going to shield the first move. The opponent going to go for an Overheat. That still would have done a ton of damage despite being resisted. We're now going to look to throw a Rock Slide just before they reach the next Thunder Punch. Rock Slide is going to get the KO. Now let's see, the opponent's going to come in with Azumarill, so not the best matchup for the Gigalith, but Gigalith does have access to Leaf Blade, which is really nice coverage in this matchup. Leaf Blade will actually two-shot the Azumarill, despite the fact that it's just a 35 energy non-stab charge move. So we fire off the first Leaf Blade. Leaf Blade does so much damage, and their final Pokemon is Feraligatr. So at this point, we've already got back-to-back Leaf Blades. First one grabs the final shield. We can throw the next one straight away. Leaf Blade probably going to get the KO here. Leaf Blade does get the one shot, and now we're actually going to swap back into Gigalith, able to reach the Rock Slide here, and Rock Slide, well, the opponent just going to concede the match, and I will say on the new code, that is quite jarring when the opponent concedes the match during a charge move, like the back and forth of the panning of the camera angles. It's just really weird and a bit jarring, but either way, into the next battle, we're going to see a Mimikyu in the lead. Now, not the best matchup for us, but we're able to grab a shield advantage nice and early. We're now going to come in with the Shadow Raikou, and we can actually just get away with going for an Aura Sphere, because either they end up shielding, or they no shield and we break the shield, the third shield anyways. So we're going to go for the Aura Sphere, and the opponent has now double shielded. They do still have that option of the third shield here, so again, we don't need to go for a Shadow Ball, instead opting for the Aura Sphere, and Aura Sphere is going to break that shield, and the opponent can now, unfortunately, no, never mind, I was going to say they're going to reach a charge move, but no, because we swap out and we snipe with our Gigalith. Now, unfortunately, the opponent able to snipe us back with the Pharaoh here, and they are going to reach a Drill Run. They actually go for Drill Peck, I guess it doesn't really matter from that range, but we're going to come in with the Gigalith. It looks like we end up lagging there, but no, never mind, maybe not. We can go for Rock Slide. Rock Slide, gonna get the KO there. Their final Pokemon, gonna be Empoleon, and we've already seen this. Of course, this is a super effective superpower from a Shadow Gigalith. It easily takes out the Empoleon, and we're able to take that game. So, heading into next battle, I'm going to see Shadow Gigalith into Corviknight. So, not the best matchup. This time around, we're going to be swapping into our Gigalith, which, of course, Raikou is going to be the hard answer there. Now, they're going to come in with a Jellicent. We're going to go straight for Rock Slide. Rock Slide, going to be no shielded here, but we can reach a second Rock Slide immediately. So, Rock Slide, number 2, is going to be shielded. At this point, we've grabbed that shield advantage. We probably just no shield here. Surf is going to get the clean one-shot. Now, we can come in with the Shadow Raikou here and look to farm them down, probably shield once, or potentially we could have come in with the Gigalith and actually outpace them to a Leaf Blade. But either way, we come in with the Raikou, we commit to the full farm down, and we're going to come out with a charge move already loaded. Their final Pokemon is Altaria, so unfortunately, Gigalith doesn't really have much play into this team whatsoever, but Shadow Ball going to connect for big damage. Now we can just settle for an Aura Sphere, which of course is resisted damage, but from this range, it likely gets the knockout, and so we grab the final shield. At this point, we're also going to shield here as the opponent goes for a Sky Attack, and we can't quite commit to a farm down, but the opponent actually swaps back into Corviknight, but that's just an Air Cutter. We can reach a Shadow Ball. We actually settle for a Aura Sphere instead for some reason. Aura Sphere does big damage, but it will actually put them into range where Gigalith can farm them down. So Air Cutter, super effective, but Psycho Cut's resisted damage gets the perfect farm down there. That is huge for us, as now we come out with the Close Combat. Close Combat, resisted damage, but it takes out the Altaria, and we're able to take that game. So heading into the next battle, we're going to see Azumarill in the lead. So a pretty decent matchup here for us. We are going to go immediately for that Leaf Blade, getting there after just 4 fast moves. So Leaf Blade going to be shielded by Azumarill. We can reach yet another Leaf Blade here, just super spammy from the Shadow Gigalith. Leaf Blade actually grabs both shields. So now we just swap out into our Shadow Raikou, baiting out a Licky, but this is perfectly fine with us. The opponent just going to settle for a Body Slam straight away. So now we can look to overfarm here, farming up to very close to 100 energy. Don't really want to go over, so Aura Sphere gets the KO there. That is huge for us, and let's see what they want to do. They're going to come back in with the Azumarill, so we're going straight for the Shadow Ball here, and the opponent just immediately going to concede the match. Don't even know what their third Pokemon was, but they've had enough already, and so we take that game. But into the next battle, we're going to see Annihilate in the lead. Pretty decent matchup for us. The opponent tries to swap out and catch a Leaf Blade. However, they're just going to be catching a Close Combat, which does huge damage, and now we can come in with the Shadow Raikou. Yes, Bulldoze is super effective, but it's an awful move here, so we're able to tank that and go for the Volt Switch farm down. Now, they're going to come in with a Guzzlord, but that's fine with us. We've got really nice coverage here. We can go for a super effective Aura Sphere. Aura Sphere grabs a shield, but are they going to double shield here? Aura Sphere, number 2, coming through, and it does grab both shields. We're going to come in with the Shadow Gigalith. The opponent swaps back into Annihilate, and we can come back in with our Gigalith. The opponent going to go for an Ice Punch there, which is quite interesting. Not really sure why they went for the Ice Punch rather than just a Rage Fist, but either way, we can go for Leaf Blade. Leaf Blade gets the knockout. They're going to come back in with the Guzzlord, and honestly, we don't really need to shield here because we do have superpower on the Gigalith, so Brutal Swing gets the KO. We're looking to overfarm here. I don't think it really matters. We're actually looking to possibly 2 shield flex here. No, never mind. We only have 1 shield remaining, and we are finally going to use that shield. I guess we're throwing as late as possible just in case a superpower doesn't get the one shot. We don't want to debuff ourselves, so superpower does actually get the KO up against the Guzzlord, and we're able to take that game. Heading into the next battle, I can see Shadow Gigalith into Shadow Typhlosion. So this time around, we are going to be swapping out straight away into our Raikou once again. And this is just going to be a Thunder Punch. However, this is going to put us into range. And unfortunately, they can just farm us down. But again, we're met with a Guzzlord, which again is actually pretty fine for us. As we can go for the Aura Sphere, dealing huge damage. Unfortunately, not quite enough to one-shot them from that range. But Aura Sphere, number 2, going to be grabbing a shield. And the opponent, they can't commit to the farm down. They have to throw some energy. Now, unfortunately, they will regain the health there from that Volt Switch, which does put them into an awkward range where we can't really lock on farm them down before they reach the next charge move. However, we're going to no-shield a Brutal Swing. They swap out into Feraligatr, and now we're going straight for Rockslide. Rockslide, going to connect. It does big damage. Unfortunately, we're not quite able to snipe them with the Psycho Cut damage from the Shadow Gigalith, so we have to use our final shield there. They come back in with the Guzzlord, but they give a huge farm down, which is amazing for us. They come back in with the Shadow Typhlosion. Leaf Blade is resisted. However, it probably gets the KO from that range, but the opponent used their final shield. Now we're taking no risk. Close combat easily takes out Shadow Typhlosion, and we're able to take that game. Into next battle, we're going to see Altaria in the lead. So once again, say swapping into our Shadow Raikou, we are going to shield the first charge move, and the opponent is going to full send the Flamethrower. We're now looking to overfarm quite considerably, just in case the opponent tries to look and make a catch, but we're going to full send the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball going to be shielded. This time around, they do catch onto Empoleon. However, honestly, catching a Shadow Ball just sets up a farm down anyway, so not the best play on their end. They're now going to come in with a Kanto Ninetales, and we can go straight for the Aura Sphere. Aura Sphere gonna grab the final shield, so now it's time to come in with the Shadow Gigalith. Of course, gonna shield a potential Energy Ball. Everything from Altaria will be resisted, so all we have to do here, fire off the Rock Slide, make sure the opponent does not make that catch. Rock Slide gets the KO there. They come back in with the Altaria, and that is certainly game over. We can go straight for the Rock Slide. Rock Slide, super effective, taking out the Altaria, and we're able to take that game. So heading into the next battle, we see Shadow Gigalith into Wigglytuff, so not the best matchup for us. We're going to be safe swapping into our Raikou, and again we're met with a Primate. So we're going to go straight for the Aura Sphere. Aura Sphere going to grab that shield advantage, and the opponent is going to throw straight away. So of course, Rage Fist going to get the knock. Oh, never mind, it doesn't quite get the knockout there, which is honestly slightly worse for us. However, we do leave a huge farm down for our Shadow Gigalith, so we're going to shield the Rage Fist. Can we get the farm down before they reach another move? Yes, we can. Now we are going to go straight for the close combat here. No messing around, no baiting. Close combat is going to be shielded, but we swap into our Gigalith, and once again, this is such a dominant matchup for the Gigalith when all shields are down, because Superpower gets the KO there. They come back in with a Wigglytuff, and even though we're probably only going to reach one charge move here, and we're now debuffed, Gigalith should be able to live the charm damage and reach a last second Leaf Blade here before the opponent reaches back-to-back charge moves or farms us down. So Leaf Blade takes out the Wigglytuff, and we're able to take that game. Into the next battle, we see Shadow Gigalith into Primate. So a decent lead matchup for us here. We are going to choose to stay in. Unfortunately, Rage Fist will probably just get the straight up KO, so we are going to shield this. However, in the two shield scenario, likely we can just Psycho Cut farm them all the way down. So Leaf Blade going to be shielded. At this point, we're actually going to swap out, catch the charge move onto our Raikou, and we get the Volt Switch in as we swap there as well, which is really nice for us because what that does is it would put them into farm down range. So the opponent forced to swap out. They come in with Drapion, that Volt Switch, and the Aura Sphere does huge damage. At this point, we are just going to look to no shield though. Crunch, going to get the knockout. Now, unfortunately, it looks like it's going to be a tricky Psycho Cut farm down for us, so we do just have to settle for a Leaf Blade here, but Leaf Blade, of course, going to get the knockout. Let's see, what do they want to do here? They come in with a Feraligatr, so we're going straight for Leaf Blade. Leaf Blade likely grabs the final shield, and then we're probably going to swap out into our Gigalith as the opponent is going to fire off the Hydro Cannon. Now, their Primate is fairly low. I'm not sure if we can lock on farm them down here. We might try for it. No, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to, so we have to go for the charge move. We're going for Superpower, which is quite an interesting play, as now that debuffs ourselves, and unfortunately, I don't think a Rock Slide will now get the knockout. Let's see, it's going to be close. Rock Slide, no, not even nearly enough damage, but the opponent, they overfarm here. That is a big mistake. We're so spammy. Superpower gets the KO, taking out Feraligatr, and we're able to take that game. So into next battle, I see Shadow Pidgeot in the lead. So of course, not a great matchup for that Gigalith whatsoever. But honestly, Shadow Raikou's looking really strong in this safe swap position, baiting out so many Licky. And of course, we've got access to Aura Sphere. Aura Sphere gonna hit for super effective damage. Volt Switch has already put them into range where that will get the KO. And we're at back-to-back already. So Aura Sphere, number 2, gonna be double shielded by the opponent. And at this point, we've got a 2-shield advantage. We can just safely let the Body Slam go through, come back in with our Shadow Gigalith. We likely don't even have to full send a close combat at this point. Yeah, we can just settle for the Leaf Blade here. And Leaf Blade, is this going to get the knockout? Yes, it is. So they're going to come back in with the pitch shot. We come in with the Gigalith, and again, Gigalith. When all shields are down, and Polion is absolutely helpless here. Superpower gets that KO. They come back in with a pitch shot, but this is certainly game over. Again, we are debuffed here, but who really cares? Rockside, okay, never mind, that doesn't quite get the KO, but they realize it's game over anyways, and they concede the match. Into the next battle, we're going to see a Licky in the lead. So great matchup for us here. We are going to look to overfarm. We are going to no-shield this. And the opponent is going to bait with a body slam. That is a huge call on our end. At this point, we're going to full send a close combat. And close combat is not respected. And it gets the one-shot. They're going to come in with Galarian Moltres. So once again, we're going to be swapping out into our Shadow Raikou. And we went with Beware, which again, actually fine for us as we've got access to Aura Sphere. Aura Sphere is super effective and it forces a shield. Now, unfortunately, we are going to lose CMP here, but we're going to shield the stomp and then go straight for a second Aura Sphere. This should be grabbing the final shield as the opponent probably doesn't want to take the damage from those Volt Switches up against the Moltres. So at this point, we are just going to look to no shield this as Stomp will get the KO. We're going to come in with the Gigalith here. We are going to go for a huge farm down, but we have to swap out and catch a charge move onto a Gigalith. But actually, we realize the Psycho Cut damage will allow us to farm them down there. So the opponent going to come back in with the Moltres. We can go straight for close combat, dealing huge damage in the process. We've already got the charge move loaded. We do look to overfarm just slightly. The opponent realizing there's not much they can do, and so they concede the match. Now going into the final battle of this video, I believe, leading into another Licky here. So once again, we are going to look to overfarm, and again, we're going to call a bait here. The opponent is once again going to go for a body slam. Huge call for us. This time around, we farm up to back-to-back close combats here. First one, are they going to shield? Yes, they do shield, and unfortunately, that was a CMP tie. So at this point, we're also going to look to shield here as we do have the close combat loaded. We swap out at the same time as the opponent. Unfortunately for us, though, we swap out into our Gigalith, but I guess we do still have some play here as we've got access to superpower, and actually we could potentially be running solar beams. The opponent uses a shield, they go for body slam, they undercharge, but we're at back-to-back superpowers here. So we've already seen superpower number 2 is going to connect. It does decent damage there. All shields are down. We can now come in with the Gallade, go for Leaf Blade here. Leaf Blade gonna get the knockout, and let's see what they want to do. They're gonna come back in with the Licky, which is fine with us. We are gonna bank the charge move there, which I think is quite an interesting play, just because, I mean, we could have just taken them out here, whereas now the opponent actually going to reach back-to-back body slams, which isn't really ideal for us, but maybe that is the correct call here. Maybe they have something super weak to the fighting typing in the back, which they do. It's going to be a ferret, but we've now got back-to-back Aura Spheres. First one doesn't quite get the KO there. We are forced to throw a second one, but either way, it doesn't really matter. Aura Sphere number 2 gets the knockout. We can come back in with the Gallade, go straight for close combat. We don't have to hit the bubbles here. Close combat gets the KO, and we're able to take that game. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now, if you want to take your support to the next level, you can become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments of every video. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has become a channel member already. Your support is greatly appreciated. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.